Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And I'm back. And why am I back? Because I've got news, which is actually not news, considering the fact that I have kind of talked about it so many times. Remember my dispute with or more like my argument with my father 7 years ago, when he first wanted to invest in a solar system, right? In solar energy, solar power, in going hybrid. And obviously it was Imran Khan's time. Everybody was full of optimism. You know, I find it very amazing. You see, I wasn't born or bred in this country, but I have spent on and off 30 years, out of which, again, I spent at least 5 years back abroad because I went back. And as you know, I was forced to come back to this country by my family, and I've had a hard time since, because you see, when you reactive depression is something that, obviously, as you know, it is when you know the cause, the reason of your depression, and you spiral because of that. So apart from the fact that I have been going through that for almost 25 years now, thanks to this very reason that I'm being forced to live in a country that I have opened my eyes up to, and the fact that people who have lived in this country and who then decided to leave this country, who worked their asses off and accumulated well-earned assets abroad, and they decided to chuck everything away and come back to this godforsaken hellhole because they probably forgot why it is that they left in the first place. But my biggest problem, which is something I've discussed a million times in my previous podcasts, is I think that it's extremely selfish of a parent when they decide to bring their children who are born and bred somewhere else back to their own country, especially when bringing their children back to that country is not an upgrade, but a downgrade on their living style, right? It's a downgrade on the quality of life. It's a downgrade on everything, really. So you're living in a country where you are enjoying, your hard-earned money, and you are having a good life, but you decide that no, you need to go back to your own country, which is a third world country at best and a corrupt country at worst, where there has been no record of any development whatsoever since the dictatorship kept on and on emerging, and where there has been a massive movement constantly till date of people out of this country, not into this country. So anyway, let's just forget all of that and just move on to the point that I'm trying to make, that for people like me who have seen all the different countries in the world, even third world countries, even developed countries, to people like me, we cannot unsee what this country is doing to itself, what its people are doing to this country, what the authorities are doing to this country. And there are those of us who just are not, we don't have that patience left in us to live a miserable, pathetic life where we know that every single day is only going to get worse. And so to be forced to live in such a country where we can see everything, and then the amazement that we have when we see the people who have lived in this country their whole lives, who were born and bred in this country, the fact that they actually choose to be so optimistic. And as I said, to me, that's not optimistic. That is essentially shamelessness. Or yes, it is shamelessness, because you are refusing to see what is right in front of you, and you call it optimism. That's not optimism. That's not being positive by any means. No, that's not being positive, especially when you've had 70 years of being positive. And I'm quoting here, tauntively. I'm mocking this word here, because 70 years of positivity, really? No, this is 70 years of shamelessness, of deliberate helplessness, of choosing not to do something, choosing not to push back, choosing not to better your lives, choosing not to do something about this country when it spirals, choosing to shut your eyes and bury your head in the sand. Yeah, that's what it is. It's not optimism. But yes, people had a new high when finally we thought that we had made a change, and we brought Imran Khan, and we made sure that this time, despite all the rigging and everything, he made it to prime ministership, and that he's. But obviously, we could see that he was stepping on a landmine. He realized he was stepping on a landmine that was meticulously placed by the previous governments and the existing army to make sure that he fails. It's very similar to how the establishment of America dealt with President Obama. And, but the thing is that Imran Khan managed to somehow outsmart and outmaneuver them in certain points that they weren't expecting. But he obviously failed in points that he had no choice but to fail because of the landmines. But again, I think Imran Khan's biggest mistake, as I've always said before, is going against his own decision to dismantle the government and do re-elections, because he had said that in one of his previous interviews, before he ever became prime minister. He said it, that he was asked that if you end up taking the government like this without having 2/3 majority, what will you do? He said that such a government is of no use to me, so I will not take that government. And if needed, if I am going to take it, then I would, dismantle it and call for re-elections. And yeah, he didn't do that. Well, anyway, let's fast forward again to my point at hand. The discussion at hand is that time, as I said, everybody was so optimistic about Imran Khan, and Imran Khan was trying to make people, he was trying to give them relief at every way possible. He started, despite the fact the solar system was already in Pakistan, people, especially in the villages, because factories in the villages, they had already resorted to a solar energy. Villagers in general were already going for solar energy for their tube wells and stuff like that, for farmers and everybody. So solar system, especially off-grid solar system, was already there. A few residential houses, they had also begun to experiment with going solar. So, but what Imran Khan did when he came was that he officially just subsidized it. He's like, everybody goes solar, and we're going to buy from the German model, right? That we're going to buy from you. It will be a unit to unit. It will not be rupees per unit and all. It will be a very simple unit to unit exchange. And then we got the licenses, and we had 7 years contracts, agreements with the NEPRA and everything. So all was good. But at that time, even my argument with my father was, do not invest in a country that has no future. And Imran Khan, I'm like, listen, the way this country is, first of all, are you even sure that Imran Khan is going to stay? I'm sorry, but I don't see any positivity here, to be very honest. And second, when another government will come, do you think that they will actually continue with this? The minute another government comes, they're going to throw away everything. They're going to throw away the contracts. They're going to throw away the agreements, and they are going to look for ways in which they can loot and plunder. So this is not an investment. You're spending lakhs and lakhs, which is millions and millions of rupees, on a system, and you're investing in a system of a country where there is no trust. There is a trust deficit here. And so you are investing in a system of a country that has trust deficit, and then you are investing on a system, in such a system, where there is you don't know what the future is going to hold. It might end up being a huge problem for you. It might be a huge, it might backfire on you very badly. And it's like, no, this, that, and everybody was going solar and this and so. Actually, we were one of the first people who, when solar companies came to residential areas with their whole hybrid installations and this and that, like Sky Electric and Pantera and all, so it's 7 years ago. So imagine. But okay, so we were amongst the first people who went truly into this whole, all-in-one system, hybrids and this and that. And obviously we weren't amongst the first, but I mean, we were amongst that whole batch that, decided to go on Imran Khan's, working model of the solar system, right? The whole net metering, the green meter thing. Fine. But we could see NEPRA and LESCO at work even there, where they were trying to undermine that project as well. But they couldn't do so much because people were very reactive. Imran Khan had a no-nonsense policy for any such games. But that is how, again, he was undermined at the end, because every single person in the bureaucracy worked in unity. in unison against him. This is my the motto for Pakistan that I have is, if you ever want to know what Pakistan stands for, it is, in corruption we stand united. Yeah, that is one thing you will always see in Pakistan. In corruption, we stand united. So the government, the army, the bureaucracy, they will always stand united in corruption. Okay, they will never stand together. They will never stand united. Neither the people, nor the authorities, nor the government, nor the army, nor the police, none of the infrastructure will ever stand united for something that is good or right. As you can see, evidence at hand: Imran Khan in jail, his wife in jail. All the senior leadership of PTI in jail, their children in jail, their wives, their spouses, their parents harassed, tortured, kidnapped. It's in front of you. So point at hand again, because I'm not digressing actually. I'm just giving you the necessary filling in of the so that this is understood. So here we are, right as I predicted. As we know, one of the first things that this government did was they decided there will be no unit-to-unit export, import. We're going to charge you we're going to charge you a maximum for a grid power supply, and we are going to pay you minimum. In fact, they wanted to take it down as recently as just this month alone. They wanted to take it down to 66 paisas, okay? Which is like pence, like cents, okay? 66 paisas per unit is what they wanted to buy solar from the new. I mean, those of us who are grandfathered projects, like those of us who started 7 years ago, we are called grandfathered projects. Our projects were called that. And then after that, they continued with the 5-year policies with newer, solar setups. And then now in between, they actually even just did not even have any. They were very lenient they continued the 5-year agreements, but they were very lenient about licenses and everything. But I remember we did have a license, actually. We had a license and an agreement, and so 7 years. Anyway, so now here we are, is that they try to make it 10, 13 rupees per unit, and then they try to make it 66 pence for the Europeans to understand, 66 cents for the Americans to understand. So that's 66 pesos for us, per unit. And then there was an outcry, so then they scrapped it. It's much like the bullshit tax that Mariam tried to initiate, and people were so pissed off, and then she had to scrap it. Yes, it was literal bullshit tax, if you've listened to my previous podcasts. And this was on cow dung. Okay? So now what is the NEPRA up to recently? And this is something I heard on Shabazz Gill's vlogs, but I also looked it up because actually our 7-year contract with NEPRA is expiring this year in October. And we were thinking what to do, because we have no good expectations from this government. Obviously, anybody with, two cells to rub together in their brains would know that. So here's this thing now. So based on recent NEPRA regulations, the new licensing requirements, potential annual fees, and net billing structure, which is lower buyback rates, predominantly target new solar installations. Existing net metered consumers, which are pre-2026, are generally protected under their current 5-year agreement, but will likely face new regulations upon renewal. And you can find this detail in pid.gov.pk, okay? This is a government website. Key details on solar regulations. Let's look into those key details, okay? Existing systems protection. As I said, those of us who were grandfathered into this whole project, and those who later on had 5 years, agreements, those existing net metering agreements remain effective until their 5-year or 7-year term expires, okay? Now, renewal scenarios. Once the 5-year term expires, renewal of the agreement will likely involve signing up for the new, less favorable net billing structure, which includes lower buyback rates, which is approximately at their current calculation, 10 rupees per unit, rather than the one-to-one adjustment, which was the unit-to-unit adjustment. And then annual fees. While grandfathering projects, which is again projects like ours, which was like 7 years ago, while grandfathering protects existing consumers, proposals for annual fees on solar capacity are part of a broader, tighter regulation of new installations. Imagine, the sun belongs to God. Remember, as I said, that there was a time that we all keep on saying there's a time when they will find a way to even tax us on every breath that we take. Soon you will find out that they'll say, oh, the wind passed at 15 kilometers per hour, you got more than your normal oxygen, so we need to tax you on that. Yeah, we'll soon be paying for the winds around us. Imagine. So this is our own installations. We're installing our own, using our own money on our own properties, an energy system that is taken directly from the sun. But they want us not only to get a license now, but they want us to pay an annual fee. So they're basically saying that they own the sun. In other words, they're saying that they're God. That's the gist, okay? Because only God owns the sun. Otherwise, the sun belongs to all of us. So if they're trying to say that we need to pay them an annual fee for taking energy, for taking free energy from the sun, which is a global source of energy, a universal source of energy, it means they're declaring themselves God. That's the way I'm seeing it, okay? So you're now going to pay a one-time concurrence fee, which will be non-refundable, by the way, and it will be most probably 1,000 rupees per kilowatt of your system's capacity at the time of renewal. And then you will have monthly fixed charges. So NEPRA has introduced monthly fixed charges that they have already introduced, as we know, and many of us are bearing the brunt of it, even those of us who are supposedly protected by the contract, by the way. So for three-phase residential consumers based on sanctioned load or consumption slabs ranging from 200 to 1,000 rupee per month. Then you have the interconnection costs. You are responsible for any costs related to meter testing, upgrades, or interconnection required for the new agreement. Okay? So now, this does not apply to off-grid, by the way. This does not apply to off-grid. Okay? So when it comes to off-grid, what is going on is, because you're not you're no longer a consumer, because you're 100% independent. So even if you have off-grid, hybrid, or just off-grid, you will not be considered a prosumer. Yeah, that's exactly what they're calling us now. By the way, they're calling us a prosumer. Those who are on grid, grid tied or hybrid, right? On grid, hybrid. So that is what is going on. So obviously now this is basically to discourage people. This is because the new people who have installed their systems, what NEPRA and LESCO have done is that they have even refused to buy electricity from them. So NEPRA owes people lakhs and lakhs, as in millions and millions of rupees, for taking their solar energy, for buying that solar energy, but they're refusing to pay. And they're refusing to buy. In other words, they have already bought it because they've already taken it, they've used it, and they've wasted it, in fact, because of, as I said, Govt does not even have the capacity to store or use all this electricity, because instead of spending all that money in the upgradation of Govt, in the renewal of hydro projects, mini hydro projects in different areas of Pakistan where they still do not have electricity, and the fact that the government has actually removed hydro projects that were started by Imran Khan in those areas, and also people in those areas who had started their own independent hydro projects where they used their own water source to make electricity. The government also clamped down on them, which is, again, it's against Islamic law. In any case, I don't give a shit about your Western laws and how you would like to look for loopholes here, but in Islamic law, nature's resources are free. Nobody can lay ownership on water, on air, on the sun, on the elements of the earth, right? These that sustain life. Nobody can but as we know, the Israelis and the Americans, and the Europeans, they are trying to claim ownership. Again, they're claiming to be gods. And so obviously this is another proof of the fact that our government, our army, are not Muslims, This is another evidence here that we have right at hand, because no Muslim would dare even try such a thing if he is a true practicing Muslim, because our beliefs, it contradicts our beliefs. No human being can lay claim to any resource that belongs to God, like water, like air, like the sun. But here we are. They are trying to do that. So this is what NEPRA is up to. And this is where, once again, I say that, look, every single thing that I predicted about this hellhole called Pakistan is all coming true, okay? Because I know people. I know human nature. I'm not a writer for nothing. I'm not a teacher for nothing. I'm not a language coach for nothing, okay? I know people. And I had sussed Pakistan out. I sussed Pakistan out a long time ago. That's why I left this country 2 to 3 times. Because this country is really not worth it. It never was worth it. And in fact, everything aside, one thing that I've always said about Imran Khan was that the worst thing that he ever did was wasting his life for a nation, for a people who are not worth it. If he were to be in any other country right now, he would be glorified. Everybody would stand by him. But he is in the worst country on earth called Pakistan. This is hell on earth, The people themselves made it hell on earth by choosing to bury their heads in the sand, okay? They don't push back. See, they pushed back on the cow dung tax and it was revoked. People need to push back. They need to push back on this policy of NEPRA's, because it goes against Islam. I know that the army has tried to dismantle our constitution, but the one thing of the constitution that nobody can dismantle is the fact that any law that contradicts Islam is automatically nullified. This is in our constitution, okay? So any law that contradicts Islam is automatically nullified. To lay claim of ownership over a free resource is against Islam. It should be automatically nullified. It should be declared null and void. It cannot go through. So here we are. Now, what are the choices people have? Those who are existing like us, whose renewals are up, those who were in the, grandfather projects, for example, or in the father projects, let's put it this, in both of those, the 7 years and the 5 years contracts. Well, those who took 5-year contracts, because they're pretty recent, they were done with this very pathetic government. So again, they still have some time. But those of us who were at the beginning, those of us who did it with Imran Khan, who have got 7 years, our 7 years are almost up this year. And we are at that point where, we have to now choose whether to renew our contract or go off grid. And obviously, it's very easy to go off grid. That's one of the best things of having a hybrid inverter, because a hybrid inverter means you can literally go to zero export. You can enable zero export and go to consumption mode. And what happens is that those of us who already have batteries, we obviously are just making full use of our batteries. Those who are those who were hybrid, but they never bothered to put batteries. They thought they would continue with their old UPS systems for emergency lights in case of load shedding. They now need to think about investing in battery packs to store all that energy, to use it day and night. We don't have to do much. Those who have hybrid inverters is what I'm saying. We don't have to remove the inverters, get a new investment, and again go offline and off grid and all. No, we just have to enable the off grid or the zero export or the SPD, whatever you like to call it, mode of our inverters, and that's it. Yeah, but the thing is that how will the government, because actually, as we said, basically the government is trying to discourage people from continuing with the net metering, because in truth the government does not have the capacity to store all that, and also because the government cannot steal from us, as I've talked about this in my previous episodes. the major source of loot and plunder that the government has is through electricity. They cannot get that from gas, from natural gas. They cannot get that from water. They cannot get that from other resources, because there are limited resources. So what do we have? We have gas, water, and light. The only way that they can literally loot and plunder is through electricity, and that is the only way they have always looted and plundered. Remember when last time they were rigging the electricity bills, and I said it's because they're up to something, and obviously they were up to something. You saw what happened in the elections. And so you can see that. So every time they're up to something, every time they need money, they need funding, then they target electricity, they target power, energy. Always, every single time. Notice that. I've been noticing it for years. So, and I realized this since this government came and very blatantly started working on that. That's when I truly realized that, oh no, this is truly how they're funding themselves. Every time they want to do something, obviously they're using the IMF funds, yes, but then apart from that, whenever they want to fund other activities, then the only way they can do that is by stealing money from us through electricity bills. That is why they keep on heaping illegal taxes and levies upon those bills, and they make us pay for things that we're not even supposed to pay for. And in Islam, as I said, there are many levies and taxes that countries seem to put on their people, and they think they're acceptable, but in Islam those are considered unacceptable. They're considered illegal. For example, in Islam, taxing people on something that is in their personal daily use is not allowed. It's not. In Islam, the concept of tax is on extra. If you have something that's extra, that is when zakat is applied, and that is when taxes is applied. So anything that is in your personal use, as per Islamic tax law, you cannot tax. So, for example, you cannot tax people for watching TV, for listening to the radio. You cannot tax people for buying something that is in consumer use, as in mobiles, as in laptops, as in blenders, as in food, edibles, as in houses in which they're living every day, as in cars that they're driving every day. These are things that are in your daily use, and it's constantly in use, so you're not supposed to tax them. But you have seen that even in our country and in every other country, we are taxed on every single one of these consumer items, on edibles, on daily life consumer items, which is, as I said, it is illegal in Islam. So taxing somebody on producing their own electricity using a free energy source is illegal according to Islamic law, and it means you're claiming ownership of the free source, of the free energy source, which means you're claiming to be God. So it can also be taken as blasphemy. So if now obviously all the religious leaders are dead, they're only alive when they have political benefits, but when it comes to actual religion, then everybody dies. And there's also, this is again evidence of the fact why in Islam there is no concept of religious scholars, not like this. No, there's no concept of priests, there's no concept of monks, there's no concept of Maulvis, because in Islam exploitation of religion by anybody is unacceptable. And the biggest person who can exploit religion is somebody who claims to know religion, who claims to preach religion. And in Islam we are all preachers, and none of us are preachers. In Islam, we're not even allowed to preach to people just like that. We have to practice first and then make ourselves an example that people should come to us and ask us about it, and then we preach. That is the original concept behind preaching, behind giving dawah, or dawat of Islam. So I'm sorry, but I do not agree with those people who go around thinking that it is inherent in Islam. It's not. It's not inherent in Islam to go and give people the dawah to Islam. No, you have to become the very embodiment of what Islam is, and force people to be so impressed by you that they should come to you and ask you about it. That is the true way of practicing and preaching religion. So yes, that is why there is no concept of priesthood, there's no concept of preaching like that in Islam. No, I'm sorry, I don't care what you say. So here we are. And that is why you will see that in most Muslim countries, people have this healthy dislike of religious scholars. Especially by religious scholars, I don't mean religious scholars, actually. That's a wrong word to use here. We have an active, healthy dislike for Maulvis. They take on the role of being religious scholars, but they are not religious scholars. Well, to be a religious scholar, you have to have had a rigorous study, research. You have to be like a PhD level, okay, to be considered even a religious scholar. So if you're not even educated and all you do is give azan in the mosque and then give khutbah and then sit down and preach to a few people, then you're not a religious scholar. And as I said, the role of a person in the mosque is of a Maulvi is just to be a muazzin, which is a person who gives the azan, a person who takes care of the mosque, a person who helps with the little social community works and all. That is what the mosque is. A mosque is a community center, by the way. Essentially, originally, a mosque is not just a place to pray, it's a community center. So that is basically his job. The person who is in charge of the mosque, his job is basically to give the azan and to be there for the community, and that's it. There's no he's not a religious scholar. Okay, so yeah, we need to get these things clear and out of the way so that I can again make my point here, which is that if you go into religion now, because here this is where somebody can play the religious card and call it blasphemy, because when you are laying claim of ownership, when you're telling somebody that they need to pay you a monthly fixed charge of producing your own energy, and then they're telling you now you will also pay, apart from that, an annual fee, and also you have to take license for spending millions of rupees to become independent, to become self-sufficient, self-reliant, to use a free energy source that belongs to the whole freaking world, then it means you're declaring yourself God. It means you're claiming ownership of that free energy source and thus declaring yourself God. And I don't give a frack what anybody says. That's exactly how it is. And this is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.